Money Stop Mafia, look who's back. It's Cole and Steven Cusumano. Your boys are back after Bubba with the big upset at the Brickyard, Cole. I don't know that anyone could have ever predicted that this would happen for Bubba Wallace going into the Brickyard. We sure didn't. We're going to try and reset things at Iowa here, man, but we had a strong favorites category, the top 5 drivers, but Bubba Wallace upset the racing world this week, didn't he?
He definitely did, and he earned that one for sure. Held off Kyle Larson in 2 double overtime restarts. Just to go over our results from this past week, we claimed 3 of the top 5 drivers, so still money to be made there. 5 of the top 10 and 6 of the top 15. So all in all, mixed bag of results in terms of finishing position. But when you look at the race as a whole, I think the analysis has still held up. You had guys like William Byron, who ran into trouble late, as well as Chase Briscoe, and a few other guys in between there. But I think you can chalk this up to strategy. And again, as I said, in the betting world, there is no such thing as, almost and coulda, woulda, shouldas. But I think what this does for us going forward, especially to a place like Iowa, where we have only had one Cup Series race, is that it resets the balance a bit here. Because, leading into Indy, you had Dover as our first normal race after what was a lot of craziness. You had 2 road courses, a street course, Speedway in Atlanta. So you had a lot of players that showed up, like Chase Elliott, Chase Briscoe, Tyler Reddick. And we saw that their speed, for the most part, in regards to some drivers, taper off between Dover and Indy. And while Dover was more standard uniform in terms of contenders and HMS and JGR, I think Indianapolis really showcased some weaknesses for some drivers and teams in terms of execution. So with that, I think having only one race at Iowa this past year, a lot of this episode is going to be based off intuition and what we've seen the past couple of weeks between Indy and Dover and overall this season.
I think that this is a perfect week to reset, Cole, as we go to Iowa, taking it to the bank, teasing what we have to come. We're going to give you our favorites. We're going to give you our sleepers. We're going to give you our value picks, our favorite prop bets, a little $50 budget for you if you want to follow our lead, as it's been a very profitable season here on the Money Stop. Looking ahead, as we take it to the bank here, our pre-qualifying odds start with co-favorites this week, Ryan Blaney and Kyle Larson at plus 450. Christopher Bell is plus 475. You've got Denny Hamlin at plus 750 and William Byron at plus 800. So this week, Cole, Bubba Wallace nowhere to be found in that top 5, and that's because, of course, it was a little bit of a blip on the radar, a surprise win for Bubba. We'll see if this becomes something to watch coming out of Iowa, but Iowa, more of like the mile flat track kind of feel, a little bit less than a mile. So going into this week, looking at those as our favorites, or at least the Vegas sportsbook favorites, what are we thinking this week for our top 2 drivers in your book?
Yeah, so I think for me, first off, I mentioned kind of what we've seen at Indianapolis in terms of execution. The bottom line is that Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson are legit. As we've seen the last handful of years, they are the top 2 title contenders for sure. I mean, Denny Hamlin rallied from dead last to finish 3rd place. Mm-hmm. Kyle Larson finished runner-up in this race again to Bubba Wallace. But I want to go there, beginning with Denny Hamlin. I think Denny Hamlin's going to be a favorite going forward. Pretty much anytime you go to the racetrack. He has just been lights out, back-to-back podium finishes. He's also only 5 points behind Kyle Larson for 3rd place in the standings and 20 points out of the lead for the regular season championship. And he now has 4 race wins this season. That's the most on the season of any driver in the sport. But I want to talk a little bit about his short track program, because these numbers are flying very under the radar in 2025. And seeing as we only have one Iowa race in the Cup Series, there's not much to go based off of. He finished 24th, by the way, last year. But in regards to short tracks in 2025, there has been nobody better than Denny Hamlin, because you look at what he's done in 4 short track starts, 2 runner-ups, 2 wins, a 1.5 average finish. Just inconceivable numbers there in regards to short track racing. And I think while that 24th place finish at Iowa last year is definitely, nothing to be proud of, I think that this is a different driver, a different team. Denny's competing at the top of his game right now, especially at this point in the season. And for that, he has to be a favorite for this weekend. Love his value at plus 800. He has a really steep value in daily fantasy, the most expensive driver at $11,000, but rightfully so. given all the reasons I just named there during my analysis. And then, of course, we cannot talk about Iowa without talking about last year's winner in Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney dominated that race, leading over 200 laps, 57% of the race at Iowa last year, including a stage win and a best average running position of 2.6. So just to put in perspective how difficult that is, an average running position of basically 2.5 in 350 laps is extremely difficult to do, especially at a track where not many had been to before prior to last year. So I think you also look at what he's done this year on the short tracks. Lowest finish of 11th, and in the three races that he's finished on short tracks this year. He has one DNF at Phoenix that was an engine failure, but a low of 11th in 3 starts that he's finished is really, really solid floor. And what he's done recently is also pretty impressive. Quietly, back-to-back top 10s, scored his 10th top 10 of 2025 this past weekend at Indianapolis. And although he has 7 DNFs, like we keep saying, he has an 8.9 average finish in the races that he has finished. So when he's been able to keep it on the track, he has been insanely impressive. So for his success when he's not wrecking out during the season, that 8.9 average points to a really, really high floor for Ryan Blaney. And going off what we've seen as of late on our more traditional tracks in Dover and Indianapolis with back-to-back top 10s, you can have a lot of confidence for Ryan Blaney going forward into a place that he won last year.
And you kind of sang the praises of my favorite for this win, and that was Kyle Larson, who is the co-favorite at plus 450 with Ryan Blaney this week. 10,500 in daily fantasy. Coming off the second place finish at Indy and going into that final restart, man, I really thought he was going to give Bubba a run for his money, but he got a really good restart, Bubba did, and the rest is history. But that is back-to-back top 5s for Kyle Larson. 15 points back in the standings. They are racing for a lot right now, and all the incentive that comes with winning the regular season championship. He's a contender to win every single race. He has the most laps led this year, which is the highest ceiling. He has the most top 10s this year, which is the highest floor. What's not to like about Kyle Larson? Well, he finished 34th at Iowa last time. However, he led 80 laps there and finished top 2 in both stages and then wrecked from the top 5 in the final stage. So if you just go back and you look at the box score and you see he finished 34th, you're not doing him diligence because he was one of the top 3 cars in that race the entire time. And he has top 5s at all 4 short track races this year. That includes a win at Bristol and a 3.3 average finish at the short track. So going into this week, as we look to shift gears, I'm looking at success on the short tracks this year. I'm taking a little bit of stock into what we saw in Iowa last year and kind of blending that in with the success we've seen at the short tracks. And I think Kyle Larson is as sure of a bet, probably the most sure bet in the field going into this week. And I also want to dive into Christopher Bell, plus 475 for the race win, 10,200 in daily fantasy. He has quietly had back-to-back top 10s. And as we always like to say, Cole, we like to be on top of the breakouts. And we know what a hot Christopher Bell looks like in his career. We know what it looks like this year. And when he heats back up, it's going to be a very special thing to be a part of, especially in the terms of betting. And when it comes to Christopher Bell, back-to-back top 10s tells me he's getting there. And he's got 13 top 10s in the series this year, which is the second most of any driver, and the second best average finish in the series of 12.4. So he's been very consistent, and we're starting to see signs of him returning to that race-winning form. And looking at him at Iowa last year, coming off the top 5, 4th place finish. Not only that, he did finish 18th at Dover, but he led 18 laps of that race, and he was second going into overtime. So looking at what he did to Miles the Monster, a lot of that race, Miles the Monster was scared of Christopher Bell. And I think that's the most recent track we have to look at. And he was leading laps. He was running up front there till the very end. Didn't get a finish that was indicative of how well he ran. So I'm looking at drivers who are really strong on the short tracks this year, namely in the case of Christopher Bell Dover and in the case of Kyle Larson, every short track. So those are my 2 favorites. You got Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin. Go into sleepers here, Cole. Shoot me off your favorite sleepers for the race win this week.
Yeah, we got a pretty stacked category here. And first off, just want to restate what happened last week. Once again, Bubba Wallace went to victory lane. His opening odds for the race win, plus 2,900. So
wish we were on that.
I know, right? What I will say is the value points to a more of a value pick than a sleeper for Bubba Wallace, but his numbers at Indianapolis in his career pointed to more of a sleeper value. So Definitely an oversight on our part for sure, but we got some really good values here for Iowa with some deep dives here. I'm going to go first off with a not so deep dive in Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe plus 1,800 for the race win, 9,000 in daily fantasy. Disappointing day at Indianapolis, his home track, following his fifth pole, 34 laps led, and that was paired with an 18th place finish due to falling behind on the wrong strategy. And now I mentioned at the top of the show why Indianapolis didn't go in our favor. It was because a lot of the drivers that we did pinpoint to have good days, they had strong performances, but they weren't able to execute properly. So I think that's something to note going forward with guys like Chase Briscoe is that sometimes they may come out on the wrong end of the execution side of things, although they have had speed. So I'm going more of the speed factor going forward for Chase Briscoe. He had back-to-back runner-ups going into Indianapolis. Again, had the speed to contend there, obviously, just did not come out on the right side of the strategy end of things. He also has had laps led over his last 4 starts and laps led in 8 of his last 10 starts. So, again, just want to emphasize the speed this team has had over the last at least 10 races so far this season. And just focusing on Iowa now for a second, finished 28th last year. I'm not going to get too caught up in that because we beat the dead horse in saying that those numbers from his Stewart Haas Racing career are obsolete now with Joe Gibbs Racing. What is important, though, is that he was part of the tire test in Iowa last month. And usually when you go have extra track time at a track that you have not had a lot of time at all in the Cup Series, it translates to a good result on the race day. So looking at a short track resume this season, 3 top 10s and 4 starts, including 2 top 5s and a second-place finish at Dover most recently. Again, a little bit of volatility, being that this will be likely a strategic race, but the speed is just too good to ignore for myself and this Joe Gibbs Racing 14 team. Now, I'm sorry, Joe Gibbs Racing 19 team. Caught up on SHR there. My bad.
Hey, that's it. We're halfway through the season. You can't be making mistakes like that anymore. The grace period is over. Stunad.
Stunad over here. That's right. That's right. But mentioned deep sleepers here. We had Bubba Wallace last week, plus 2,900. Give me Josh Berry, plus 2,200, and a really nice $8,000 daily fantasy. Finished 22nd at Indianapolis, but had a lot of speed early. That marked 4 finishes outside the top 20 in his last 5 starts. And he also has a best finish of 12th, which happened 3 times over his last 10 starts. So he has not had as high of a ceiling as he's had to start the year off. But I think there are signs of encouragement between Dover and Indianapolis with the speed in mind for this this team over here. Now, in terms of his short track resume, he has been an ace in that regard. He finished 4th at Phoenix, 40 laps led at Martinsville, 12th at Bristol, and 28th at Dover, despite having speed there. But looking back at last year at Iowa, finished 7th with 32 laps led, finished top 5 in both stages, and had a 5.7 average running position, which is good enough for 4th best overall in the series. Now, you're going to get to your 2 sleepers here, but I also wanted to speak on my reasoning for picking Josh Berry over someone who I had not included on this episode, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick had a lot of speed in this in-season tournament, mainly because of the lot of the road courses and street courses in that 5-race set. But on the short tracks this year, he has a best finish of 12th and a 16th place average finish in those 4 starts. And again, like Chase Briscoe, who I just mentioned, they had speed. They had a back-end top 10 car in this race, but they fell behind on strategy, and that allowed them to get caught up in a wreck in one of those overtime restarts. So, again, it's just kind of picking and choosing your battles here for sleepers. I like going with more of a deep dive here, seeing what Bubba Wallace did last week, and just speaking on what we've seen from Josh Berry as a race winner in 2025, as a short track ace, and what he did last year at Iowa.
I like those 2 picks. However, they're both kind of, I feel like there's something to be desired with both of them, right? Where Chase Briscoe and Josh Berry haven't had the high floor and even the high ceiling that you would expect out of guys in this category this year. So I'm going with 2 former champions for my 2 sleeper picks. And we've been singing the praises of Chase Elliott. I will not say all year long. I will say the last 7 to 8 weeks. We've been singing the praises of Chase Elliott, and I'm going to do it again this week, who's plus 1,100 for the race win, 9,800 in daily fantasy. Coming off another modest day, 13th place finish at the Brickyard. He remains the points leader, though, the best average finish of the sport at 10.1. And looking at what he did at Iowa last year, which was a down season for Chase Elliott standards, well, at Iowa, he finished third. That included top tens in both stages and the third best average running position of the field at 5.5. So that checks a box there for me. And I look at his success and his results on short tracks this year. He has 3 top tens out of 4 races, a 10th place, a 4th, and a 6th, along with a 15th. So if 15th is his lowest finish on a short track this year, and that was at a point in the season, those first 4 short tracks, where, at least in the case of pre-Dover, the first 3 short tracks, where things weren't going as well as they are right now for that team. If that's the floor, I like what the idea of a hot Chase Elliott and a hot 9 team looks like going into this week at Iowa, especially considering the results that we saw out of him last year at this track. So Chase Elliott is one champion. The other is the defending champion, Joey Logano, plus 1,200 for the race win, 9,300 in daily fantasy. And he had the DNF at Indy, but he was leading late. Prior to that, had top 15s in his 3 prior starts. So for Joey Logano, he was starting to heat up, and then he was, again, having a really good run at the Brickyard before he cut down the tires. So you can't control luck. You can only control what you can control. And out of what we saw the 22 team control, they had themselves in command of the race. So I think that this is still a hot team trending in the right direction, coming off a 6th place finish at Iowa last year and an average running position inside the top 5. The downside to Joey Logano and why he's a sleeper, not a favorite, is his result at short tracks this year. He has only 1 top 10. So he finished 13th, 8th, 24th, and 14th. So there is sure a little bit of a floor there if you take out the 24th place finish. But I think that that team always heats up around the playoffs. We are officially around the playoffs. We have our first August race of the season. By the end of August, we're going to be playoff racing. And I think that team knows how to turn things up when they need it most. And that is right now. So we saw glimpses of it last week. It wasn't reflected with the results out of the 22 team, but I really like the idea of Joey Logano and Chase Elliott, 2 former champions that know what it takes to get hot this time of year and to go to a track that's still relatively unfamiliar in the Cup Series and go out there and put a beat down on the rest of the competition. So much more to the fact than, guys like Josh Berry and Chase Briscoe. Sure, they're trending in the right direction, but there's a difference between that and the guys that just know how to get it done already this time of year. And I think that is Chase Elliott and Joey Logano.
I don't have any disputes there. I think I have apprehensions with Joey Logano given his inability to close out races. I think only 5 top 10s this year and 22 starts. But he is one of those drivers that has had prior experience at this track in the Xfinity Series or then Nationwide Series when they raced there. And I think obviously Chase Elliott, his floor is just way too good to pass up on. He still has not finished below 20th this year. And even on a down day at Indianapolis, he finished top 15, 13th place. Mm-hmm. So this team is just clicking on all cylinders. And yeah, looking at how he finished, 3rd place last year, you'd be foolish to ignore Chase Elliott and the streak that he's been on despite Indianapolis this season. But, for me, I think I want to swing for the fences a bit with Josh Berry. Top 10 last year. He's had some speed this year, won a race at a non-drafting track. So I really do think he has a good shot to finish top 5 this week. And then Chase Briscoe, I think it's weird to say that he might be the biggest hit or miss in this section just because he doesn't have as much history to back up Iowa like Joey Logano does or Chase Elliott. But I do think that the speed's just too good to ignore for me with Chase Briscoe this week.
So that is our 4 sleepers, which I feel good about overall between Briscoe, Berry, Elliott, and Joey Logano. Value picks here, Cole. You mentioned taking a swing for the fences before. I'm going to kind of take a little swing for the fences with my value picks. Why don't you kick this off for us?
Yeah. So for this first driver, I gasped seeing his value this week, and it just blew me away because there's no way this is even possible. Mm-hmm. Alex Bowman in the value pick section is plus 4,000 for the race win.
Why?
And $7,100 in daily fantasy. You ask why?
Tell us why is he not there's a reason you're picking him. Why is he valued that low? What is the downside? Give me the dirt.
You're asking me for an answer that I have no answer to because there is no rhyme or reason as to why Alex Bowman is that severely undervalued this week. 9th place at Indianapolis was back-to-back top 10s. That was his 12th of 2025, which now ties him with Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott, guys that are top 5 in points right now for top 10s this season with 12. And all those have come very recently. He has an 8.1 average finish over his last 7 starts. And you mentioned the playoff race before with Joey Logano and such. He's only 63 points to the good with 3 spots left available in the playoffs right now and 4 races to go. So he's had the speed as of late. He scored top 10 last week. And he also finished 8th place at Iowa last year. So to answer your question, I have no idea why he's valued that low this week. But Vegas's oversight is going to be our Money Stop Mafia's gain right here because, again, 8th place in Iowa, also 2 finishes of 7th or better on short tracks this year, including 3rd place 2 weeks ago at Dover. So he's had short track success. He's had a lot of speed as of late with the results, and he even had a good result at Iowa. So I don't know why the value is so against him this week, but throw some money on a race winner bet. You had Chase Elliott and William Byron finish top 3 last year. That team is also top 3 in the standings right now, so he could pop off at any point. You know he's going to be good for 1 win this year at least, and he is going to be a lock for daily fantasy once again at $7,100. Alex Bowman, lock him in all day. And then finally, going to go with old Ryan Preece for a value pick this week. Plus 6,000 for race winner and $7,000 in daily fantasy, coming off his 2nd top 5 of the year at Indianapolis and his 9th top 10 of 2025. He now posts a really remarkable 16.5 average this year with 13 top 15s, pointing to a very high floor. He's also 42 points out of a playoff spot right now for a team that, in my opinion, deserves to be in that round of 16 for how consistent they've been the entire season. And I think you look at the 4 races going forward, this very well could be his best shot at getting a win to lock him into the playoffs because he is a renowned short track ace. And again, while many drivers do not have a lot of experience outside of last year on this Iowa racetrack, he won at Iowa in the Xfinity Series back in 2017. He's now also running once again for RFK Racing, who has had really good speed. He himself in the 60 team has been arguably the most consistent driver on that stable. So I think that's going to be a great value pick for this weekend. And again, like Alex Bowman, a lock for daily fantasy. And one other thing to note here, in true Josh Weinstein fashion, Ryan Preece said, and I quote, "I want to go to Iowa and fucking kick their asses." Ryan Preece is out for blood this weekend. We are going all in on him. I am going all in on him anyway. And I'm taking that 27th place finish from last year and throwing it out the window because this is a different team, a different driver, and I can just see this number 60 car potentially going to victory lane this weekend. I'll put it as simply as that.
I love that. I love that pick of Ryan Preece. I like the idea of somebody the caliber of him or Alex Bowman or Josh Berry going out there and kicking their asses. This is like the group of hungry drivers. It's go time right now for the guys like Ryan Preece and Alex Bowman who haven't punched their playoff ticket yet. And there's a scenario where the two of them can definitely race in on points, especially in the case of Alex Bowman. For Ryan Preece, yes, he can do it on points, but he wants to go out there and kick their asses. And I think that as you look at hungry and maybe even desperate drivers near the top of that list, one of my first value picks here, it's got to be Brad Keselowski. Coming off the top 5 last week, all 3 of his top 5s this year and all 6 of his top 10s have come over his last 10 starts. So it took this team a while to get cooking this year, but by the time it happened, we're now starting to see that 6 bunch kind of return to the form we saw last year to some degree. And he's over these last 10 races, it's a 13.7 average finish, which is 8 spots better than his season average. So that really puts in perspective just how much more speed they've had the last 10 starts compared to the first several starts. So needless to say, Brad K is in his hottest stretch of the season, evidenced by the top 5 last week. Plus 3,500 for the race win, 7,600 in daily fantasy. Very good value for a driver that must win. And looking at what he did at Iowa last year, that was finish in the top 10, finished top 10 in both stages, and he had the 7th best average running position in the field of 11.2. So Brad Keselowski starting to heat up. You can feel it, trajectory kind of going upward, top 5 last week. We saw a surprise winner a week ago. I don't think it's going to be the last surprise winner we see before we get to the playoffs. And I think that he's a guy that at this juncture in his career, he's got to get things going here to try and get back into the playoffs and just flip the script, so to speak, on his 2025 season. So I like Brad this week as a great value at 3,500 plus on the sports books, and then 7,600 in daily fantasy. Then I give you another driver that is a winner this year. So he is not one of those that has to win going into this week at Iowa, but that is Austin Cindric, who's plus 5,000 for the win, 6,900 in daily fantasy. And I'll start with the dirt for Austin Cindric. Last 3 finishes at short tracks, 4 finishes were 19th, 17th, 16th, and 16th. So there's a lot to be desired there. There's 4 top 20s, but there's no top 15. So there's floor. And coming off of last week at Indy, had some speed, finished 15th, but blew a tire from the lead. You're starting to see the glimpses that race-winning speed is there, and it's been there this year. And, he finished 30th at Iowa. So you're probably thinking to yourself, why am I picking Austin Cindric this week? And it's not just because there's a floor at these short tracks, but he was one of the drivers that participated in the tire test at Iowa. So Austin Cindric has that upper hand on the competition. And we've been talking a little bit about the fact that the Team Penske Fords have shown some sportiness. They always do, especially lately, especially around the playoffs. They know they're gearing up for a playoff run. They've got to get hot too. So I like Austin Cindric as an outside shot at maybe even the race win, but definitely a top 10 at plus 5,000 for the race win. And top 10 odds for Austin Cindric all the way at plus 650 for a top 5. But here I have him at a top 10 for plus 150. So that's odds I can kind of like at what his value is this week. I'm a little higher on some of the guys you mentioned. Like I really do like Ryan Preece and Alex Bowman. Brad Keselowski, a guy I've definitely got my attention on, and Austin Cindric certainly in the fold too. So that's our 4 value picks this week of Cindric, Keselowski, Bowman, and Preece. I think we're in agreement on most of those.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Austin Cindric's going to be a really underrated pick this weekend, especially in regards to daily fantasy. And BK, they've been on a great stretch as of lately. I think once again, they were able to come out ahead with the top 5 finish, even with was a very strategy-heavy race, and a race where it looked like they were going to fall behind and not get a good finish out of that day. So just a lot of things finally going right for that team, just a little bit too late. So always want to be wary of the volatility that comes with going in that must-win scenario mode. So overall, I love all 12 drivers that we've picked so far for Iowa.
As far as loose change goes, Cole, I kind of led off with this a little bit. This is where we kind of discuss narratives or storylines that weren't acknowledged with the 12 drivers we mentioned that we probably should discuss because they're top of mind for a lot of NASCAR fans. I think the loose change that comes to mind is Bubba Wallace. Coming off a win, a surprise win. How sustainable is that? What are we expecting out of Bubba this week? Why didn't we mention him on this week's episode? And is this something we could look to see more of potentially going forward?
I mean, it's definitely not out of the question. I have more faith in that team, seeing what they were able to go out and do at Indianapolis. And I think the bottom line is that confidence is contagious with Bubba Wallace. We've seen it clear as day. So I really, as much as I want to keep tailing him and having confidence in him from a betting sense, I want to see it to believe it again. I want to see it happen consecutively. We mentioned earlier in the season how it was shaping up to be his best career season to date. And he tapered off a little bit towards the midway point. Now he's finally, we got back to victory lane. He's had some better results as of lately. So if he can keep it up, I will have more confidence betting him going forward. But I just want to see this pace sustained more than anything. And I just think when your money is on the line, you want to advocate for drivers that you have a sense for how they're going to do, whether it be based off prior results, recency as of late, or what have you. So I think there's always, as we saw last week, the chance that a driver like Bubba Wallace is going to break through and get to victory lane. From there, it's a matter of seeing how they can sustain that and keep it moving going forward. So that's kind of my 2 cents loose change on Bubba Wallace.
That's very sound reasoning, especially with how we saw that race play out at Indy. So recapping our 12 drivers, favorites, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, sleepers, Chase Briscoe, Josh Berry, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, and value picks Ryan Preece, Alex Bowman, Brad Keselowski, and Austin Cindric. So as we move to prop bets this week, we call these big money bets because you can throw a little bit of a higher chunk of change on them. Last week, ended up going 3-4 on big money bets. So we mentioned this was the week where things came down to earth. It was still a profitable week in a lot of respects. We had Kyle Larson plus 150 for a top 3, which cashed. We had Kyle Larson better than 5.5, which cashed, and Brad Keselowski better than 11.5, which cashed. So if you were in on drivers like Brad K and like Kyle Larson, who we mentioned, and even a few of our other favorites like Ryan Blaney, Carson Hocevar, who was one of our favorite values of the week, I think that you were able to make some change last week. However, looking ahead to this week, our favorite top 5, top 10 bets, and also better or worses. What comes to mind for you when we look at the bets that the sports makers put forth this week?
Yeah, I think there's two that stand out to me from a top 10 sense. It's got to be Brad Keselowski's prop at plus 125 and Alex Bowman's prop at plus 135. Two drivers that are in our value picks category. We gave all the numbers and analysis there not too long ago. BK has been on a great stretch here, 13th place average over his last 9 starts, and in need of a win to get into the playoffs. Former champion, a guy that has had success on this track in the Nationwide Series, so I like his top 10 prop quite a bit. Alex Bowman, once again, top 10 here last year, riding back-to-back top 10s, has an 8.9 average finish over his last 7 starts. So, again, do not know why Vegas is undervaluing him, but that Bowman one specifically is one that I'm very high on this weekend. And then, of course, Denny Hamlin, plus money for a top 5 for a driver that has finished first or second in all 4 short track starts this season. That is a no-brainer right there. Denny Hamlin, top 5, plus 105. Hammer that one all day.
I like our prop bets this week. And when I think of top 10s too, Cole, I like what you mentioned in Brad K and Alex Bowman for top 10s this week. And I'm looking at some that are like a Josh Berry, minus 120 for a top 10. I know it's not even money, but man, I like Josh Berry and his promise this week. And then also Ryan Preece at plus 135 for a top 10 also feels like one that is good for me. Like those are two I would say are like maybe just outside of big money bets. They're like medium money bets, right? Those are prop bets that I like that I'm not willing to maybe put a huge chunk of change on. So looking ahead to our DFS lineup, we mentioned the fact that there's a lot of values in the field this week, Cole. And because of that, we're able to cater our lineup around some of those values and make room for several different aces. So if you lead this lineup off with Ryan Preece, Alex Bowman, and Brad Keselowski, 3 of our value picks who are valued at 7,000, 7,100, and 7,600, you can even throw Josh Berry into that mix at 8,000. Go with those 4 drivers to lead off the lineup. It leaves you with a lot of flexibility as far as aces go.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the formula for success here, as you mentioned, is going to be those 4 drivers as your foundation. Ryan Preece, Alex Bowman, Brad Keselowski, Josh Berry, 4 drivers who we feel very good about as sleepers and values this week. And it gives you flexibility to work with those top 2 drivers, your ace and then your sub ace. I went with Denny Hamlin as our leadoff driver for this one, just given his stats on the short tracks this season. And I also had Chase Briscoe right behind him at $9,000. So look, the thing about this lineup, I like both those Toyota drivers a lot this weekend. However, I think in looking at those 6 drivers, the biggest question mark, as I mentioned during the sleeper analysis, is going to be Chase Briscoe. So if you don't feel confident in Chase Briscoe, there's still money where you can play around with, to where if you swapped Briscoe with Chase Elliott, who I think has a much higher floor, finished runner-up here last year, you could actually put Kyle Larson as your ace in this situation, who, again, led 80 laps, finished top 2 in both stages, and just wrecked in the final stage. So I think you cannot go wrong with Hamlin or Larson as your ace. Hell, even Ryan Blaney could be a really solid value this week, given what he did last year at Iowa and how he's done lately on track with back-to-back top 10s. But I think your safest options are going to be Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson maybe more so, given what we saw last year out of that team at Iowa. So if you were to put Larson and Elliott as your top 2, followed by Berry, Keselowski, Bowman, and Preece, I think you're set up for for success either way with both those variations.
Now let's put our money where our mouth is too, because I like that DFS lineup a lot. Where that factors into a $50 budget, we're going to put our money where our mouth is and give you an idea. If we were going to use $50, which maybe we are, who knows? If we were going to make $50 worth of bets, let's talk about where we're going to put that. And last week, we got to make a little money back because our only bet of the budget that hit was Kyle Larson, top 3, plus 150. Put $10 on that, got 25 back. So to make some money back this week, looking at some of the bets that we had mentioned as far as the big money bets and a guy like Kyle Larson dominating the fold, he made us some money last week. So why don't we kick off our budget talking about a Kyle Larson winner pick at $10 and a top 3 pick at $10. So you're putting, 40% of that bankroll on Kyle Larson. If you're going to bet it on any driver in the field, I feel good about him. So if that's or not half, but 40% of our $50, what are we doing with the other $30?
Yeah. I just want to restate our confidence in Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
Doubling down on him essentially, because we thought he'd win last week. He came home runner-up, and I think it's going to parlay into a really good run once again here at Iowa, given how he fared last year and how he's done on the short tracks this year with his 3.3 average finish. So $10 for the race win, $10 for an insurance top 3 finish. That paid off last week when he did not get that win. And then from there, I've got two $15 bets. One on the top 5 prop for Denny Hamlin at plus 105. Again, I mean, you look at how he did last year at this track, finished 24th. He had an average running position of 23rd in this race, but this is a different driver, a different team. They're competing at a completely different level. And just seeing how he's done on the short tracks this year at the 2 top 10 or two wins and the 2 runner-ups, it's no brainer for me. And then, of course, we feel very good about Alex Bowman for a top 10. Back-to-back top 10s coming in, finished 8th here last year, in need of a good run to keep his status in the playoff right now, sitting 15th and 63 points above the cutoff. $15, Alex Bowman, plus 135 for a top 10.
This feels like a week to me, Cole, where we had a surprise winner last week. I think we're going right back to a championship contender that's going to win. And, I like somebody like we were talking about Alex Bowman, Josh Berry, Ryan Preece. I like the prospect of those guys to run top 5, top 10. But I really feel like as we jump into our race winner picks, we're looking at like a Kyle Larson, a Denny Hamlin, a Ryan Blaney, a Joey Logano, somebody that we know is going to be there when it's the round of 8 and when it's the championship 4. I feel like after the week we had with Bubba being the surprise winner, we're due to see an ass whooping of some kind from one of those caliber of drivers. So last week, my winner pick was Chase Briscoe, who ran out of gas, unfortunately. I think I picked him first. Am I right about that?
You did. Yep.
So you got the floor. You got the first winner pick this week.
Yeah, definitely going to go with Kyle Larson this weekend. Just seeing how he's done the last 2 weeks, back-to-back top 5s, runner-up last week. Had a great car in this race last year. I think Kyle Larson's going to be the moneymaker for us this weekend and all you Money Stop Mafia listeners out there at home. So give me the not so inspiring and flashy and fun answer in Kyle Larson to win the Iowa Corn 350.
I like that pick. I probably would have went Kyle Larson if I was going first. I think we're putting a lot of confidence in him, putting a lot of chips in his basket, and there's not a lot of explanation that needs to be said for as to why. I'm going to go with Joey Logano for my winner pick. This is the second week in a row where I'm going with somebody from our sleepers category. I'm just going with my gut. I feel like whenever we go into these kind of races, like Joey Logano is the kind of guy, his wins seem to also come when you're not necessarily expecting them, right? And coming off of that finish last week where he cut a tire from the lead, people forget how good he was running in that race. People forget he was heating up going into the Brickyard. And I think that, again, they know how to do it this time of year. I like Joey Logano. Gut feeling is a big part of it. But, again, there's too much to overlook with the solid success of the short tracks. 6th place finish, running in the top 5 all day last time they went to Iowa, and just the fact that he's heating up right now. So probably a little bit of a sleeper pick there with Joey Logano, but that's what I'm taking for the race win this week. And looking at some drivers outside the top 15 in odds for my sleeper pick, I got to go with my boy, Josh Mother effing Weinstein, my Ryan Preece, who has been my most popular sleeper pick of the year. When in doubt, talk to Josh Weinstein, our new agent.
Yes. And again, for those who have not listened to prior episodes, whenever Steven has picked Ryan Preece or Josh Weinstein for a value pick, he has went on to finish top 10. I feel very great about him this weekend, too. He would have been my value pick had I got to pick first, or I guess sleeper in this this section. So Ryan Preece, I would lock him in for a top 10, lock him in as your foundation for your daily fantasy lineups, and consider him for a top 5 even. As he said, he wants to put an ass whooping on the field. He very well could do it. It's possible. So for me, I'm going to go with Alex Bowman. Again, I do not understand how he's plus 4,000 for the race win. He's valued somehow lower than Brad Keselowski, who hasn't had a win, who has not won recently as of lately in his career. And Bowman's just been on a tear lately. Again, 8.1 average in last 7 starts, back-to-back top 10s, top 10 here last year. Makes no sense not to pick him.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are 2 great sleeper picks. This is the Iowa Corn 350. Is there a better race name?
Probably not. No, I don't think so.
Feel like there's got to be some contenders up there, but like it's the Iowa Corn 350. That's pretty damn cool.
It is. I mean,
they should do a corn on the cob for the trophy.
They have the corn on the start-finish line, which is pretty cool. But I agree,
cool.
That'd be badass.
Iowa Corn 350 at Iowa Speedway, and this is 3:35 Eastern time on Sunday, which means I'll get to watch the start of the race because, man, late in the season we revert back to Sunday night games in Somerset, unfortunately. So I'll get to watch some of it during the game, but most likely I'll have to catch up afterwards. But parting words here, Cole. This is it's been a very profitable, fun summer. To me, my general temperature going into this week is like we're going to the playoffs soon. Like this is starting to feel real. Like I'm getting myself geared up for Phoenix. Going to be there in like 2 months. I really feel like it's going to go quicker than we think, and the intensity continues to ramp up with every week we get further. The regular season points battle is heating up. The playoff bubble is heating up, especially after Bubba's win. My kind of demeanor right now is like it's starting to get a little bit tense, isn't it?
It is. It's officially crunch time. There's 4 races to go. You've got drivers like Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs, all that are chasing those final 3 playoff spots. And it's very possible, given the complexion of these following races before the postseason, Daytona, Watkins Glen, Iowa, that we could very well see 16 winners before we get to the round of 16. So it's going to be very interesting, very fun to watch. I'm very excited for Iowa because, I mean, we only had 1 cup race there last year. I found it very entertaining, very unpredictable. We had a lot of strategy play into this one. Also a lot of passing and just a lot of good on-track action. So looking forward to more of that. And, it's crunch time. Let's do it.
It's the Iowa Corn 350. How can you not be fired up about that? The Iowa Corn 350. Say it with me. The Iowa Corn 350.
The Iowa Corn 350. Iowa Corn 350.
Yeah. You know what Bubba Wallace had last week before he won?
What's that?
23 team had a great money stop. You can't win the race without winning the money stop. You can't win your bets without listening to the money stop. Drill it into your brain. You cannot have a good race without nailing the money stop. You can't win your bets without making your stop on NASCAR's most important betting stop of the day, the money stop, presented by SpeedFreaks and Kicking the Tires. This has been all the good stuff. Big thanks to everyone involved with the money stop. Obviously, Cole Cusumano, I'm the little bro, Steven Cusumano, Cody Johnson, everyone at SpeedFreaks. That'll do it for us as we go to the Iowa Corn 350, baby. Let's see what we're talking about next week. We're going to drop the jack on the most important NASCAR betting stop of the day, the money stop.